Hey guys, this is Libby recording from my home in Vineland today. So, while I'd much rather be talking to you guys about all of our favorite Star Wars characters or debating which actor played the better Batman, today I want to talk to you guys about the criminal case of Patricia Hearst. So, a little bit of background for those of you who don't know. Patricia Hearst was the heiress to the Hearst publishing company owned by her father, and she was kidnapped on February 4th of 1974 by this group called the SLA, the Symbionese Liberation Army. And they pretty much thought that they were going to get some financial gain out of kidnapping her. Fast forwarding a couple of months to April 3rd, she put out what this group had called a communique, a communication to the public declaring her intentions to stay with them and fight with them for their cause. After she made this declaration, she was then involved in an armed robbery at a bank, and she was also involved in a shoplifting incident where she had sprayed the front of this retail store in gunfire, injuring quite a few people. Fast forwarding again a couple of months, we're looking at September 18th of the same year. She was then apprehended and arrested by the FBI. So the big question in this case is, why would somebody in their right mind join such a violent, radical group and commit all of these crimes? Her first defense, before she even went to trial, tried to say that she was under temporary insanity. She didn't really know right from wrong, didn't know what she was doing. After she had gone through some psychiatric evaluation and she was getting ready to go to trial, she then had a new defense led by this guy named Bailey. Bailey then focused on the matters of coercive persuasion or brainwashing, and he also focused on mainly what was the point of the courtroom defense of this issue of duress. And duress, as defined, you can look it up at Google: threats, violence, constraints, or other action brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment. That's the definition of duress. So you were coerced into doing something, either mentally or physically with threats, and they forced you to act against your will. So normally in a courtroom, the issue of duress does not require psychiatric or psychological testimony. However, in this case, duress was very unclear. So psychiatric testimony, you would think, would be very, very helpful to this case. The evidence that was presented in this case of duress was that Patty's IQ had dropped from 130 to 109. She was exhibiting PTSD-like symptoms, and under a psychiatric evaluation, the psychologist said, and I quote, "She was emotionally impaired to a significant degree." Now, all of these things could happen under intense trauma and traumatic events happening to you, whether it is over a prolonged period of time or a very short period of time. It's also possible for that to happen as well. Even though the evidence to support this matter of duress seemed to us pretty black and white, the courtroom defenses were extremely biased, not only by the defense, but the prosecution, which presents us with a problem. On the side of the defense, with bias, we look at the fact that the psychiatrists who were involved had been in contact with the family and pre-diagnosed the issue before they had even met or talked to Patty. They believed that she had acted under duress without even evaluating her, which kind of makes him look like an ass. On the other hand, we look at the prosecution and kind of the same thing, but on the flip side, they were in cahoots with the prosecution trying to put Patty away, rightfully so, but then you can't really use that person in an expert testimony. And they had found completely the opposite through evaluation, that she was not under duress. So who's really telling the truth here and giving us the real facts of the case? The problem with that all is that the court allowed in biased testimony, and not only did it not allow for Patty to have a fair defense, but it made the case very unclear, and there is a lot of controversy around it. Nobody really knows whether she acted under duress or she acted of her own free will because she was what people called a rebel looking for a cause. So the way that I look at this case kind of leaves me with a few things that I hope take place in the courtrooms now. And if they don't, then I really think that they should be. As far as expert testimony, I really feel very strongly that it should be saved until the end of a criminal trial. That way, a jury is not so easily influenced by its thought process. Because even though a jury is supposed to be able to make up their own mind, look at the facts of the case and decide for themselves what they believe to be true and what they believe to be false, if you hear an expert testimony whether or not it is biased. You go, wow, that person's the expert. I should really be listening to them. If they feel that this is this and this is this, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So even if it looks like a duck and moves like a cow, you kind of can't put two and two together, but the jury can be influenced. We're all people, can be influenced. So that really needs to be held until the end of a criminal trial. I also feel very strongly that the court, while preparing these cases, whoever is in charge of setting them up and examining them, needs to examine if there is an expert testimony. They need to examine the relationship not only between the expert and the defense and things that they have said and their history with these people, but also an expert testimony and their relationship to the prosecution and how they've gone about the entire thing. Because if we have these biases, they do not allow for a proper criminal trial, and they do not allow somebody to have a fair trial when they really deserve one. So guys, that's the case of Patricia Hearst, and I hope we learned something today. Hope to hear from the rest of you.